experience, where we talk about how you can leverage your expertise through digital learning programs so you can scale up, create impact, and live the lifestyle you desire. And this week, we're going to continue on with our series that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. Our series where we've been taking you through our process of creating an impactful learning program. We talked about how you can set the focus, how you need to define the prize. We need to create the offer, plan the promotion. And this week we step into the fifth step, which is very much around crafting those really amazing and powerful quality learning assets. A great quote that I love, that people won't remember what you said, they won't remember, you know, what they did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And creating these quality learning assets, giving them a quality learning experience, is going to help them to really feel powerful, and they're going to remember that. So as I said, this is part of our clear and defined process that we take you through. This is step 5 in our process. So we've gone through, we've set the focus, we've worked out what our goals are, we've worked out the objectives of what we want to do. We've defined that prize that people are going to get, that how we move them from pain to prize and what that prize is going to be. We've crafted that offer. We've created those outstanding visual models. And we've planned the promotion. And based on that planning, the promotion, based on enough people putting their hands up and saying, yes, I'm interested in this, or even putting their hands in their pockets and paying you some money, then we can move on to the next step, and that's of crafting the assets. Okay? And we do this in this order because we don't want to be going and crafting the assets is the time-consuming part. It's the part where people are going to be spending more money with building the assets, creating videos, whatever that might be. Time, effort, all of those things is much more increased at this stage. And so we want to make sure before we do that people are willing to pay or want your solution. So that's why we're doing the plan promotion first. So what we're doing in this, we're crafting the assets, and that's where we tap into our assets framework that we've built, which is very much around analyzing those learning objectives, structuring the blueprint, selecting the appropriate tools and media, engineering the learning experience, testing and refining the assets, and setting up the learning platform. So let's dive in and have a look at each of those steps. And the first one is very much around this piece around analyzing the learning objectives. Now, when we've created our offer, when we created those amazing visual offers, we would have gone, okay, we know the process, and process will take them through these, whatever, 5, 6, 7 steps, whatever it might be. And then we would have created some sub-steps underneath that. So we know all of the different outcomes, the different objectives that we want people to be doing as part of this process. And so what we then want to be doing is we want to come back to that. We want to analyze those learning objectives, and we really want to be looking, and it gives us opportunity to look at where they are, and obviously starting with the end in mind. So we know, okay, at the end of this program, people are going to be able to achieve this objective. And so that's where we're at. That's what we're doing here in this first part, is analysing those learning objectives and starting with the end in mind. And it gives us this ability to really focus on the core information. So often we see people that move away from the core. They don't focus on the objectives, and by packaging things up into those powerful visual models that we did in step 3, we've got our defined process, and that is our core, and that's what we focus on, and we don't want to move away from that, because when we do, then we start to overwhelm people with a whole range of different content, and that's not necessarily a good thing to do. Then we want to move into structuring the blueprint. We've got our objectives worked out, and then we want to structure that blueprint. And this is really the steps that people are going to be taking, thinking about it as a roadmap or a journey that we're going to be taking people on. And we want to be structuring it with those objectives in mind. We want to be looking at those different steps. And coming back to focusing on the core, we want to try and avoid the kitchen sink syndrome. This kitchen sink syndrome that often I see, it's the curse of the expert, where people throw in too much information, or they want too much information to be included in the program. And as a result, by doing that, what it actually does is it actually increases the overload. Too much information is going to create cognitive overload, and people won't remember the key pieces of information that you want them to achieve. They won't remember it. They will remember other things, and or they will remember nothing because they'll be just so overwhelmed. Because the reality is that once we actually, overwhelm people, their brains are going to become fried. They're not going to remember, and as a result, the whole learning experience is going to be a failure. So we need to make sure that we're not packing too much stuff in. So again, building that blueprint is very much coming back to those learning objectives. What are each of those steps? And making sure that we've built it in such a way that we're not overwhelming people with too much content. We want to have a logical structure. We want to break down that complexity and take people through a process that maybe goes from the known through to the unknown, so they understand what those steps are, and giving them that defined process and those defined steps to make it easier for them to understand. And we want to build it in such a way that we have small bites that are targeted to one specific objective. And we do this for two reasons. One, it goes back to that kitchen sink syndrome that I talked about. By targeting and having things just focused on one specific objective, then that's it. We just deliver that content, and we know we're not going to overwhelm people, because all we're doing is we're just focusing on one outcome, on one objective. The other thing, though, is where this becomes really powerful is it then allows you, as the course creator, to then take that content and go, oh, I can actually use that asset that is delivering this one objective. I can use it in other courses, or maybe you can use it in your marketing, or put it into a mini course, or other things where you can use it. Or if you find afterwards, as you're running your course, and find that just doesn't work. It's just not hitting the mark. It's just not giving people what they need. Then you can actually replace that asset with something that actually is better. But all you're doing is replacing the one asset, because we've built it all into small bites. We're not replacing the whole big thing. So it's very important to really do that and focus on those small bites as part of the process. And that really makes things so much easier when we do that and approaching that. The other piece as well, when you're thinking about that blueprint, is to think about, well, what are the different points of learning? Okay, there's a whole range of different points of learning that we can factor into our blueprint as we go through. There's a whole range of ways that we can engage people. And we can look at how are we going to excite people. Okay, first thing we want to do is we want to switch them on, and we want them to be able to see the WIFM, the what's in it for me. We want to excite them. We want them to be engaged in that process. And we can do that through stories. We can do that through, good stories, bad stories, case studies, a whole range of different ways that we can do that to excite people. Something that shows them the benefit of what they're going to be learning as we go through. We can then give them information and get them to inform them on things. Give them the knowledge that they need. Give them opportunities to implement the skills that they've developed through that knowledge. Give them an opportunity to reflect on how they've been going. If they've gone and implemented something, an opportunity to reflect. But also building in a point of learning that encourages that social learning. We are social creatures. We love to learn from and with each other. And so it's important to factor in those social elements as well. So thinking about that when you're building up that blueprint, thinking about all of those different points of learning that you can factor into your learning experience. And then we want to, once we've done that, once we've built that, we then want to start and think about selecting the appropriate tools and media. Okay, we've got our points of learning, we've broken it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. We then want to go, okay, what's the most appropriate tool? What's the most appropriate media that we're going to be using in this space? Now, obviously, we need to look at how we can use a range of media to engage. Okay? We want to think about what are all those different types of media that can be used. Is it text-based media? Is it video? Is it people in a social collaboration through Zoom? All of those different types of things that we can do, range of media, pictures, images, workbooks, textbooks, and things like that. Having those effective visuals as well, that allow us to connect emotionally as part of that process. Building in those effective visuals that allows us to connect. Okay, we want to have effective and quality visuals. We want to have visuals that are relevant as part of that. And going back to those points of learning, we can think about, well, what are the different pieces of media that we can do? Is there some piece of media or video or something like that that we can create that's going to build anticipation? Could maybe we have an expert delivering a keynote, a very short keynote, that's going to give them an overview of where they're going as a way to excite them? Could we create an edumercial? These educational commercial type things. So it's a bit of fun and engagement. So a whole range of different types of media there that we can create. When we start to thinking about informing people, do we give them text content or do we go with video? I mean, video is a great medium, but it's not the only medium. And thinking about different ways that we can do it. Maybe in our blueprint, we've got a whole range of, we're doing a hybrid model and we've got a whole range of virtual events happening as well. So is there an opportunity for FAQs as part of that process to generate questions and provide information through that process? And thinking about then the other points of learning in terms of implement. How do we get people to implement things? Do we give them checklists or templates or problems to solve? Do we get them to create something? And that's all going to depend on exactly what you're doing. If you're delivering a marketing program, well, I might get people to actually create a marketing strategy. I might give them some templates that help them to guide them through that process. If we were doing some other sort of training, maybe customer service training, I might give them some problems, and they have to deal with those problems and come up with solutions on how they're going to solve that. And that gives them an opportunity to apply their skills and knowledge. And then going through with that and think about the reflection. How do we get them to reflect? Give them reflection questions that are going to prompt them. Give them a self-assessment tool to go through. So these are all different types of media that we can create as part of this learning experience. And then obviously the social. Thinking about what do we do from a social? Is there team problems we can get people to do in our hybrid environment and they come together in group collaborations? Do they do a peer review? Maybe they have to, going back to our marketing course, maybe they have to review each other's marketing strategy and do a peer review on it. Maybe there's community where they can collaborate and share information. So a whole range of different touch points there as part of that process. And then we obviously need to look at how we can engineer that learning experience. This is where we actually build out our learning experience. And we want to consider the user experience. We want to make sure that this is a positive user experience for the people going through our course. So it's a matter of coming back to some of our early work that we did and identifying the persona, understanding how they access technology, understanding their needs and wants, and crafting this powerful user experience that's going to be of benefit to them. And looking at all of those factors, looking at how we can bring in that professional imagery that's going to complement the content. Imagery that is going to align with that. So it needs to be relevant imagery as part of that process. And looking at a whole range of different quality sorts of imagery, and then looking at audio. If you're building videos or podcasts and having clear audio free from background noise. And then looking at making sure that everything is consistent with your style, aligning it to your brand as part of this process. So a number of different things to think about when you're engineering that experience. You can also look, we've got a blog article we did earlier talking about the principles of multimedia. Mayer's principles of multimedia has got a whole range of other things in there as well to think about when we're actually crafting the user experience. And then we want to test and refine. We want to go in and we want to test it and make sure that everything is working as intended, making sure that we expect people to do stuff, and making sure that if we've got links, then the links are working, that pages are loading quickly, that people aren't sitting there waiting for videos to load, that things aren't stalling or having any issues, and making sure that all of that stuff is working and testing and refining it as we need to really improve that user experience. And then we want to get into, obviously, once we've done that, we want to set up the systems. We need it to live somewhere. So we've got to create our learning platform, or put the learning platform together and set up that system and do that process and look at how we can do that and consider whether or not it's going to be you or the digital you. Is there going to be, a virtual platform that you are turning up, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, GoToWebinar, all any of those sort of webinar tools? Are you going to be setting up one of those systems for you to be able to collaborate and share with people? Or is it going to be a digital you that is going to be sitting on a platform that people go and engage with? So thinking about those pieces when you're setting up those systems. And also making sure that when you're setting up the systems, it is setting up a pathway, a learning pathway, and not just a training pathway. Okay, so that's setting up a learning pathway, not a training pathway. Okay? It's a subtle difference, but really thinking back to your personas, thinking back to your people and going, okay, what do they need to learn? What is that process that we're going to be taking people through? How do we give them those opportunities to learn? How do we do that? Build it so that people can fill their own knowledge gaps, as opposed to a training pathway that we just go, hey, this is what everyone needs to do, and we're just going to do it in that way. And that's it. That is the 6 steps for our asset framework. So analyze your learning objectives, structure that blueprint, select your appropriate tools and media, engineer that learning experience, build it and make it amazing, test and refine the assets, and then go through and set up your learning platform so people can access it and consume that content. That's it for this week's Tuesday Talk. As per usual, any questions, jump in, drop them in the chat below. And if anyone's interested, please jump in, join into the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups, the Maven Haven. Would love to see you there. Just relaunched it on Facebook, and we're just trying to build it up again after moving off onto a different platform. So would love to see you there. Anyway, that's this week's Tuesday Talk. We'll be back for another one next week. Until then, thank you.